I'm studying now the contents of that shelf.
The shelf.
Sir, greetings from Toronto. Congratulations on coming here for Fan Expo.
Oh,
You have been spending a lot of time with the fans. What's that been like to have this sort of interaction at this point in your career?
oh, it's life changing. Actually, it's taught me so much. It's amazing what you learn when you actually listen to what people say. And what do you do when you're not interviewing aging dwarves and things like that?
What do? I'm a film critic, so I'm somebody, I will say, who found your portrayals on screen transformative, but there's something about your voice, and I don't mean the timbre of your voice, but what you bring to each character. You elevate and bring a realism to your performances within the capacity of the film is trying to make us believe it's not real, and you make us believe it's real. And that's what I love about what you do as a performer.
Well, I don't think anyone has ever complimented me so generously. Thank you. That's very kind. Very kind.
You, sir, are. I believe that Raiders of the Lost Ark is not only one of the greatest films, it's often on my top 10 films of all time because it's a film that shouldn't have worked. If they would have shot just what was on the screen, if it just would have been what it was meant to be as the sort of schlocky B movie, and yet it is elevated thanks to what you are doing. And if you look at how none of us believed that the Lord of the Rings films would work out. None of us had any confidence that these were unfilmable books.
Yes.
And somehow, in this world of dwarves and elves, you humanized the character thanks to incredible direction. And so I asked you, you looking back on it, how did you get both of these roles? And how did you feel entering these projects with any trepidation?
Well, let's start with Raiders of the Lost Ark. The script was essentially a series of stage directions and things happening. We wrote and improvised quite a lot of it as we went along. There's a wonderful photograph, extant with Harrison and Karen and Stephen and myself. And Stephen's got the typewriter in front of him, and we were all reaching our hands out, and Stephen going like that. And in a way, it's an iconic image of that period, and that there was so much improvisation, and Stephen at that time was like a young Mozart. That's the only image that I can give. Effortlessly creative, and able to take any suggestion and say, no, that's not what I want. But if you did that instead, upside down, that would work. No, yeah. Oh, yeah, add that. Yes, go on. There was a creative freedom in that first one.
I mean, for God's sake, you improv the singing of a song at the Bantu Wind.
Yes. Yeah, that sort of thing. As I recall, that scene was the very first scene that I did on the film. It is actually my last scene in the show. And I turned up and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm writing your dialogue." And I looked over his shoulder and I said, "I wouldn't say that. He'd be more inclined to say da 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 da." And he said, "All right, da 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 da." As soon as it gets a bit darker, we'll be shooting the scene. Oh, by the way, your character, when he's high or happy, bursts into Gilbert and Sullivan. Incorporate that at the end of the scene, will you? And I drew myself up to my then full 6'1" inch. And I started to say to him, "Mr. Spielberg, I am a classical actor. I need weeks and weeks to prepare." And I said, "All right." It was fun, and it was very spontaneous.
And then on the opposite, you have this 2-year project of interwoven stories. You're putting on makeup that's making your skin literally crawl. how different are those two experiences? Which are the ones that, you know, fans who come to Fan Expo, these are the ones we could go on about Victoria, we could go on about so much of your career, but specifically that feeling of when you are one piece in this massive 2-year production, how do you find your character in the midst of this chaos?
Well, you find the character obviously in the script, and you look and see, how do I serve this script? What does this story need that I can bring to it that's different? Well, and we'd already discovered that that he'd written for it, and Tolkien had written the sound of the elvish voices really was almost Welsh. Welsh. We knew that the hobbits were West Country. The people from the West Country were his inspiration. So what is different about the dwarfs? I could have gone Irish, of course, you know, but I wanted a rougher, more dynamic sort of Scottish, sort of nearer Glasgow than Edinburgh, which is a very nice and genteel voice. You know, there's nothing genteel about Gimli. There's a little bit in the throat there, you know, and it's a sort of vigor and a fire that fiery men like us with beards have. And you've got to get all that through the prosthetic makeup. You know, when you've got 2 inches of extra face with no muscle in it, in order to make the eyes open, you've got to do. You've got to do that. In order to make the face work, you've got to do. You know, you're gurning really, and those were the technical. And then of course you've got the bloody padding and all that sort of thing, and you've got. You need to be fat in order to reduce the size, and it doesn't help when you're. Well, I was fat actually, but it doesn't help. You know, when you're the tallest member of the fellowship, and you're meant to be smaller than the elf and Strider himself. But you serve the actor serves the script. And then he adds to it his own energy and spin. And really good directors, the great directors, will allow and encourage some actors to improvise. Obviously, if you're a director and you're working with, you know, with one of the great improvisers, and I don't include myself. I'm thinking of Robin Williams, for instance. You know, if you're a director and you expect Robin Williams to stick strictly to the script, you're doomed to disappointment. But if you're wise enough to cast him like that, then you know that you will get some addition to the script that will make it, elevate it, and make it absolutely extraordinary. And I don't put myself in that class, by the way, but I can make a contribution.
You're in the same school, shall we say? Now we were talking about. So look, our website is That Shelf, you know, and you're welcome to say That Shelf, and I'll use it on my videos as your voice.
All right, I'm studying now the contents of that shelf.
Brilliant. The deal is That Shelf is that place in your home where you put the stuff that, you know, your tchotchkes, but the things that you love, the things that almost define you, those things from your past. What of your career do you have on that shelf in your home? What are the things that you have that are the sort of detritus of this incredible lifetime of doing creative work?
I do have a hall of shame, which has various things like my D.Lit, that was an honorary doctorate of letters that my university gave me, which is framed with odd bits of framing, so it looks really, really rather naff, as if it. I don't yet have my fellowship of the Royal Astronomical Society yet framed, because they sent it to me, but they misspelt the name, which I really should actually frame. Yes, lots that there's a room of that, but the real things, are the things that I've collected: Neolithic stone axes, Neanderthal axes.
Hold on. You are most famous for saying, "And this is my axe," and for working with an archaeologist. This is what you're most famous for. And you're telling me that and literally the word Neolithic is spelled on the chalkboard by Harrison Ford. Are you telling me that your actual real life is a collision between these two characters?
Oh, yes, very much so. I'm passionate about history. I know that word passionate is now the most abused word in the English language. Every CV has to have passionate in it. But yes, history, archaeology, science in particular. I mean, I have a couple of stones that I picked up from the beach near my house in the Isle of Man. They both have little fossil things in there that were laid down when really many millions of years ago. And one is quite common. One is in red sandstone, and that particular red sandstone was laid down when the Isle of Man, which is in the Irish Sea, was roughly where South Africa is now. They're called crinoids, these little fossils. Anyway, man's place in the universe is a glorious thing. To paraphrase a wonderful part of the Book of Kings, it is the glory of God to hide a thing. It is the glory of kings to seek it out. And I would add to that, let us be kings.
When your story is told, you have worked, you've been very active politically. You have been very active in terms of social justice. You've been very active in the theatrical community. You've been very active on screen. What do those who know your big stories, we know The Lord of the Rings, we know Indiana Jones, can you give us some insight into things that mean more to you than maybe due to some of your longest running fans, so that we can explore more about you, your life and your career?
A people without history is not redeemed from time, said Eliot. We have to understand our history if we are to know our present. If we are to see our future, then we have to be well informed. I'm proud to do work for NASA because NASA is one of the glories of mankind. I believe that moral men must look at older men are rather like those silverback gorillas watching the herd graze around them and looking with their suspicious, distrustful eyes around to see where the ambush will come from. And I see at the moment a lot of places of ambush. And we come from a time of genuine, warm, liberal sentiment that has not changed as the circumstances have changed. And to speak out, to draw attention to these things, is to condemn yourself and perjure yourself before half your audience. The tension between Actors should have no opinions, basically, so that the audience can put any face on them that they wish. But really, as moral men, we have to look at problems.
You and I were having a human moment there,
Yes,
and
indeed.
I appreciate you very much.
Well, thank you for your interview, and I admire your books. But I have to tell you, young hobbit, that I have actually you've got basically records. I've got CDs. I've got about 1,800 CDs. Oh, one last thing. I have a germ of a short story in my head where 200 years, 2,000 years from now, the aliens come and they are able to reconstruct. They are able to reconstruct some of the music. But since it's now all on little sticks, they have no idea of who wrote that tune. You know, the great thing about those long-playing records, like you learn something about the music and who performed them. With this little recording stuff that we have these days, and even
Spotify will lose their stuff. But as long as there are movies, people will be watching movies with you in them. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you sometime in person. As I said, if you wish to continue this conversation offline, you know how to find me. There's only one Jason Gorber via Google. I'm very easy to find, sir.
Thank you.
All the best.